Deontological ethics is a branch of moral philosophy that emphasizes duty, obligation, and moral rules as the basis for determining right and wrong actions. The ontologist believes that certain actions are inherently right or wrong, regardless of their consequences. Immanuel Kant, an 18th century German philosopher, is considered to be a cornerstone of deontological thought. His moral philosophy is based on the concept of categorical imperative, which states that we should act only in ways that we could will to be universal laws. Agent-centered deontology focuses on the motives and intentions behind an action rather than its consequences. Agent-centered deontologists believes that a person's moral worth is determined by the purity of their intentions. For example, a good doctor who treats a patient with compassion and respect, even though the patient is unlikely to recover. Kant's goodwill. Kant argued that the only thing that is unqualifiedly good is a goodwill. A goodwill is a will that is motivated by a sense of duty and a desire to do the right thing, regardless of the personal benefits or consequences. Patient-centered deontology focuses on the moral worth of individuals and their right to be treated with dignity and respect. Patient-centered deontologist believes that we have a duty to respect the autonomy of others and not treat them as mere means to our own ends. For example, a teacher who protects a student from bullying, even though it may mean jeopardizing their own reputation. Kant's categorical imperative states that we should act only in ways that we could will to be universal laws. In other words, we should not act in ways that we would not want everyone else to act in similar circumstances. Contractualist deontology views morality as a set of rules that are agreed upon by rational agents to ensure fair and just interactions. Contractualist believes that these rules are based on a hypothetical social contract, which is an agreement among all rational agents to abide by certain principles in order to promote the common good. For example, a society that upholds laws and agreements, even though it may not always be in the best interest of every individual. Kant's universality principle is a key tenet of contractualist deontology. It states that moral actions must be consistent with universal law that all rational agents could agree on. In other words, we should only act in ways that we could will to be universal laws, even if we know that others may not follow them. Here are the advantages of deontological theories. Personal relationships. Deontology allows individuals to prioritize their personal relationships and values without compromising their moral obligations. For instance, we may have a duty to help our family members, even if doing so may not maximize overall happiness. Supererogation and moral praiseworthiness. Deontology recognizes acts to go beyond moral requirements, allowing for acts of extraordinary kindness and selflessness. These acts, known as supererogatory acts, are not required by duty but are still considered morally praiseworthy. Supererogation and moral praiseworthiness. Deontology recognizes acts to go beyond moral requirements, allowing for acts of extraordinary kindness and selflessness. These acts, known as supererogatory acts, are not required by duty, but are still considered morally praiseworthy. Accounting for strong moral intuitions. Deontology aligns with widely held moral intuitions, such as prohibition of lying and cheating. These intuitions are often difficult to reconcile with consequentialist theories, which focus on maximizing overall happiness or well-being. Moral standing and accountability. Deontology assigns moral standing to individuals who have been wronged, providing a basis of justice and accountability. We have a duty to respect the rights of others and hold them accountable for their actions, even if doing so may not maximize overall happiness. Deontological ethics provides us a robust framework for moral reasoning that emphasizes duty, respect for persons, and universal principles. Kant's contributions to deontology have shaped our understanding of moral obligations and the importance of ethical decision making. Also, deontology offers a valuable perspective on morality, providing a framework for navigating complex ethical dilemmas and upholding principles of fairness, justice, and respect. As we face increasingly complex moral challenges in a rapidly changing world, deontological theories continue to provide valuable insights and guidance for ethical decision making.
The weaknesses of deontological theories. Understanding these weaknesses is crucial for a broader perspective on ethical frameworks. So let's begin our exploration of weaknesses of deontological theories. Foundation of weaknesses. Deontological theories have their own weak spots. The most glaring one is the seeming irrationality. Seeming irrationality of our having duties or permission to make the world morally worse. Deontologists need their own non-consequential model of rationality, one that is viable alternative to intuitively plausible. Until this is done, deontology will always be paradoxical. Next is there are several distinct hurdles or weaknesses that the deontologist must overcome. First is conflict between duties and rights. Next is problem of dire consequence. Third is manipulability of deontological doctrines. Next is paradox of relative stringency. Next is question of authority. Last but not least is moral appraisals and blameworthiness. The first weakness conflicts between duties and rights. Deontological theories struggle to resolve conflicts between certain duties and rights. Immanuel Kant's claim that a conflict of duties is inconceivable lacks sufficient reasons for belief. This means that the conflict between duties and rights is about deciding what to do when two moral duties or rights clash. For example, balancing the duty not to lie with the right to protect someone's feelings when asked about a sensitive topic. For example, in a real-life scenario, a nurse balancing patient confidentiality, which is its duty, with the obligation to warn of potential harm when a patient reveals plans to harm someone. The ontologies introduce the intending or foreseeing, doing or allowing, causing or aiding distinction as attempts to mitigate the conflicts. For this weakness, for the first weakness. Second weakness is problem of dire consequence. Deontological ethics face challenge of persevering individual agency even if leads to morally worse outcomes. Patient-centered and agent-centered version of deontology both struggle to escape this moral paradox. The problem of dire consequence is about making ethical decisions when doing the morally right thing leads to harmful outcomes. For example, choosing between following a moral duty not to harm others and preventing significant harm by taking a difficult action. For example, in a real life scenario, a police officer facing dilemma of representing an individual's rights during an investigation or using force to prevent harms to others. Deontologists present strategies to address this dire consequence. This includes absolute adherence to norms, threshold deontology, and distinguish moral reasons from all things considered reasons. Next weakness is manipulability of deontological doctrines. Agent-centered versions of deontology can be manipulated through a strategic means to achieve morally permissible outcomes, which threatens the integrity of ethical system. Manipulability of deontological doctrines is about the risk of strategic manipulation to achieve morally permissible outcomes within ethical rules. For example, exploiting technicalities in ethical guidelines to achieve desired result without violating explicit rules. For example, in real-life scenarios, a business leader strategically framing financial transactions to stay within legal and ethical boundaries while maximizing profits. Deontologists mention the doctrine of double effect and the doctrine of doing and allowing as potential source of manipulability. A fourth weakness is paradox of relative stringency. Deontological duties are considered categorical, yet some duties are seen as more stringent than others. Resolving conflict duties and determining the degree of wrongness in violating them poses theoretical challenges. Paradox of relative stringency uh, is about dealing the contradiction of considering all duties as categorical yet varying in perceived importance. Example of paradox of relative stringency is balancing the severity of different moral obligation, such as whether honesty is more important than loyalty in given situation. As an example, in the real life scenario, a journalist deciding whether to prioritize revealing the truth or honesty or protecting a vulnerable source, which shows its loyalty in an investigative story. Deontologists discuss the concept of weighing duties and against each other in case of this kind of conflict. Weakness number 5. Questions of authority. Deontologists need to justify the authority of general texts in deontological ethics. Deferring to this text without a theistic justification is a challenge for many deontologists. Questions of authority is about needing to justify why specific morals, rules, or texts should be authoritative. As an example of this, exploring the basis for authority of certain ethical guidelines over others and addressing skepticism about their legitimacy. For a real-life scenario, example, individuals questioning the authority of a company's code of conduct and seeking justification for its moral directives. Deontologists explore the importance of individual agency within a secular objective morality. Last but not least, the sixth weakness, moral appraisals and blameworthiness. Deontologists must grapple with the relationship between moral appraisals of acts and the blameworthiness of or praiseworthiness of agents. Holding that an act is morally wrong but the agent is morally praiseworthy creates an incoherent morality. Moral appraisals and blameworthiness is about difficulty in aligning judgments about the morality of an action with judgments about the blameworthiness or praiseworthiness of the person performing the action or the agent. As an example, determining whether someone should be praiseworthy for showing courage in a morally questionable situation. Example in real-life scenarios, evaluating whether a whistleblower's revelation of corporate misconduct is morally right or praiseworthy, despite violating internal policies that shows blameworthy. As a conclusion, despite these weaknesses, deontological theories continue to be a significant area of study in ethics. Scholars and philosophers strive to address these challenges, develop alternative models of rationality, and refine deontological theories to provide a coherent and action-guiding ethical framework.